guys, it's Yorkie here with round 2 at Donington Park with the Elite League from Apex Online Racing, and you are currently joining me on a flying qualifying lap. This isn't my quickest, I'm going to be showing you our fastest one, which is the one that actually follows this. But hopefully, as you saw just as you joined us, I was up in the first sector. We're just coming through sector 2. Now at the moment we've got a car in front of us, although there's a little bit of room between myself and him, so he won't really affect my downforce all that much. As you can see, go and get it horribly wrong through the chicane. Ended up taking too much off on the inside as I ran too deep, and I've now basically completely backed off. So actually the guy in front is also pulling over to the side of the road to go into the pit. So we've got a completely clear track in front of us. You can see it's night time, and unfortunately at Donington there are no floodlights, so it's going to be a difficult race trying to spot the circuit and braking points and apexes and everything else like that. So here comes my actual qualifying lap, then coming onto the start finish straight, shifting up through the gears as we move the car over to the left hand side. We're going to brake just before the chevrons finish on the left hand side there at the pit exit. You want to try and hook up a late apex in turn 1, running a tiny bit too wide on the exit there, but that wasn't too bad as we come down the hill now into turn 3, completely flat out. Bring the car over to the left hand side for turn 4, try and open this one up as much as possible and try and get on the gas as soon as possible as well and carry the speed through. It looks like we're about a tenth and a half up on our fastest lap at the moment. Coming through into sector 2 now, getting the car nicely slowed down. This is where I'm really strong in this car, and this car really excels, is through these two corners here. I can make up so much time with the setup that I had over a number of other drivers, and we get those two corners nailed down quite nicely. Hopefully this time we'll be able to take the chicane a fair bit smoother than we did last time, braking just as we get to the rumble strip on the right hand side there. Very nice smooth run, a tiny little bit of counter steer coming out through the exit of the chicane there. Now finally the last two hairpins, which is where I really struggle with this car. I don't quite seem to be able to get the power down as much as a number of the other guys, so I just have to take these fairly smoothly. I'm still a tenth and a half up at the moment on my fastest lap. We're going to come across the start finish line now as I get a little bit of oversteer. Where is that going to put me on the grid for the start of this race? Where's the finish line? There it is, and I'm 2 tenths up. However, I'm still only good enough for 13th position. This is definitely not good, and there you can see the final results from qualifying. So I'm down in 13th. Fortunately, my teammate Andrex, he's actually gone and qualified up in 5th, so it's a decent qualifying for him. I just seem to really struggle, 2 seconds off the pace from F1 Massa, and I think a lot of that actually comes in the final sector where I've really been struggling with the car. But hopefully we can get ourselves a decent start to the race, make up some positions, and then go from there and basically do a little bit of damage limitation and try and pick up as many points as possible. So here we go then for round 2 at Donington Park. Just waiting to get up onto the grid and prepare myself for the start. So putting ourselves in first gear, just waiting for the lights. Launching the car off the line and getting a pretty decent launch straight away up onto the rear of the R8 in front of us. It looks like a couple of the guys are going to try and make some moves down the inside. I'm on the outside here, so I'm just going to have to hang it out wide loose, as it looks like a couple of guys are going to make contact and spun off to the right hand side of the circuit there. It's going to put me up into P10, and I've now got a little bit of a run on Tipple, who's here on my front left. I'm on the outside for turn 3 and inside for turn 4, and basically I just didn't think that would be worth risking the move up the inside there, making contact and throwing away 3 positions that I've gained already in this opening lap. So going to settle in behind Tipple. Whilst doing so, I've gone and lost about half a second. I've got, as you can see, I've dropped back quite a fairly significant amount to the roof of Tipple in front. However, that is a good start. Very happy with that. However, there's quite a big cut there by a number of us. It's very hard to see the track, especially when you haven't got much room between you and the guy in front. You basically just tend to rely on follow them. He's gone and brake very early into the chicane, which has gone and allowed me to close right up onto the rear of his car. I've got a little bit of a run here coming out the chicane. However, I did kind of cut it, so I'm not going to bother really making an attack on Tipple, and instead just going to remain tucked in behind him and basically just try and keep as close as I can in these opening laps, especially through this final sector where I've really been struggling. And you should be able to see just the lack of acceleration that the car has coming out of the hairpins. Even though Tipple was kind of a little bit wide from the apex, he's still eking out a little bit of a gap. But now coming into sector 1 and 2, this is where my car performs a lot better. It's got much better aero efficiency, and that allows me to carry a little bit more speed and a little bit more grip. And as you can see, staying quite nice and close to Tipple, who's going to run a little bit wide there, taking a bit of a poor line through turn 4, just allowing me to get up onto the rear of his car, kind of half having a look at a move down his inside for that left-hander there, which would have put me on the outside for this right-hander. But again, obviously I'm still trying to settle into this race a little bit, and also Fizzy Fan, who's behind me in 11th, has actually gone and dropped back to about 3 seconds behind, so I've got myself plenty of breathing room. There's no real need for any rash attacking manoeuvres at the moment. We've got 38 laps. It's quite a long race. It's going to take again a little bit too much off on the inside of the chicane there, so I had to lift out of that to negate any advantage. We would have just seen the roof of Papan spinning off to the outside of the chicane there as well. So that's gone and gifted me P9 now, and it looks like there's a couple of guys swapping positions up ahead, and now you can see I'm starting to lose touch with Tipple just in front a little bit. You can see the gap is now up to about 1.5 seconds coming through this final sector. I was only about 4 tenths up, or 4 tenths behind in sector 2, so yeah, you lose an insane amount of time coming through those 2 hairpins. And I did try and adjust my setup to try and negate some of the time that I was losing. I noticed it from testing and doing a testing social race with a number of guys. I was just really struggling through turns, well, the last 2 corners, those 2 hairpins, and I basically tried to adjust my setup for that. However, because Sector 1 and Sector 2 were so good for me in those social races as well, so much quicker than any of the other guys, as I ran a little bit wide there over the curb on the exit of that right-hander, and again go and take too much off on the inside, so I had to lift out of that one a little bit and hesitate on the throttle to negate some of that advantage. Obviously 1.1 seconds and losing a little bit of time to Tipple in front. But yeah, because my Sector 2 and my Sector 3 were so strong, I basically thought that it would be best to go with what I had been running in testing and in that social race. Knew that I was comfortable, and basically just try and push through Sector 1 and 2 and then manage Sector 3 and try and manage the time loss there, essentially. So I didn't really want to go and completely screw up my setup and then not feel too good going into the actual race itself. So start of lap 4 now, we are just under 2 seconds behind Tipple, dropping back. You can see our times are improving. It's been a little bit of scruffy, some of the corners here and there. But Fizzy Fan is dropping back. He's now 3.5 seconds behind me as we come into turn 4. This is one of the key corners to not cut and extend on the exit. That there was pretty much bang on, and it's gone and put me a tenth quicker than my fastest lap so far, which was my previous lap. I've only done 2 full laps of proper full speed running. Obviously the first lap was a standing start, so you lose a lot of time from that. But yeah, gap is about 2 seconds at the moment, just hovering around that mark to Tipple in front. However, this race is quite long. Just going to flip the car into the chicane, bouncing over those curbs. And we're now 4 tenths up on the fastest lap. But yeah, because it's night time, obviously 5 times acceleration. We did actually start the race at 9 PM in game time, so it's going to be a night race from start to finish, which means that the temperatures shouldn't be too bad. Obviously this is under patch version 6, and tyre heating in that version of the game. There's a lot of flash heating, and it can make tyre management pretty tricky and very important, so don't have to worry about that too much. I'm on the soft tyres, and they should last about 20 laps. We will need to do 1 pit stop, and then the second stint will be on soft tyres as well. So you can see the gap to Tipple has now got up to 2.2 seconds. These are the two corners where I'm pretty strong. You should see that gap decrease now. It's now just dipped under 2 seconds. It's gone back up in the braking zone again. It looks like someone's had a little bit of a moment coming into this right-hander, kicking up a lot of dust and a lot of tyre smoke. So you can see I gained a couple of attempts in Sector 2 at the moment. However, I'm losing a lot in this final sector. But then again, I am also trying to settle myself into a consistent rhythm at the moment rather than just pushing all out. It's early stages and I'm feeling fairly hopeful. Gained 4 positions already from the race, so pleased with that, and basically I just don't want to make any mistakes that's going to chuck away a lot of time and cost me even more places. The gap to Fizzy is now just under 6 seconds, as we again go a little bit faster than the previous lap as the tyre pressures come up to a normal operating temperature. Basically the car settles down, becomes a lot more predictable, a lot more comfortable, and that allows me to push a little bit harder. Again, getting a nice smooth run through turn 4, right on the limit with the white lines on the inside, but that should have been fine. And then these two corners, or this, should I say, this corner, and then this next long, pretty much a double apex right-hander. That'll be the first apex there. Second apex, roughly there on the with that curve. You don't have to hook it up tight on the inside. So obviously you want to try and unwind the wheel and then maximise the acceleration as much as possible. And it looks like one of the marker boards on the right hand side there in the braking zone to the chicane has actually disappeared. And that is actually one of the key markers for a number of people. I don't actually use it myself. I reference the curb that's on the right hand side of the track there, but a number of guys use those marker boards, and losing those is very detrimental to them and their reference points for their braking. It makes it a lot harder when a key braking point is being taken away, and it makes it very easy for people to make mistakes. So this turn 1 is very tricky. You've really got to open up the middle, the entry, and then kind of bring it tighter for the middle and the late apex. But so far we've been taking that fairly smoothly. Along with this turn 4, staying quite nicely within the track limits. As you can see, for the second lap in a row, we're about a 10th down in the first sector at the moment from the fastest lap. However, Sector 2 and Sector 3 had been a little bit quicker on the previous lap. And you can see just how dark it is. Absolutely no floodlighting whatsoever around the circuit, apart from on the pit lane in the start-finish straight. But even then, that doesn't really spread the light enough across onto the actual start-finish straight itself on the actual track. The light is mostly contained in the pit lane itself, so you're having to rely on the headlights and just hope that the drivers don't take out any of the marker boards or anything around the circuit. We have been told to not do it, basically avoid doing it where possible. So obviously a number of guys rely on those, like I was saying on the previous lap. So 27.3, 2 tenths off my fastest at the moment, but seem to be fairly consistent at the moment. Last 3 laps have been within 2 tenths of each other, so it's a pretty good pace fairly early on. You can see I've got pretty much a full tank of fuel at 77 litres at the moment. I think I started with like 85, and that will be enough to last me the full distance of the race. I won't need to take any fuel on in the pit stop. However, I will like to change tyres. There was a possibility of running mediums in this race, however, there wasn't really much point. There wasn't really too much of a performance difference between the two tyres and in terms of lap times and the the actual tyre wear was actually fairly similar to the softs.
You're gaining on this guy. The gap's now 2.4 seconds.
So I just turned the crew chief, or one of his features, back on.
Just done a 1:25.5,
which is to give me race updates. I started with the race with literally just him spotting for me, as in qualifying I was feeling the pressure a little bit, so obviously I was down kind of out of where I should have been, really. I was qualified in 13th, and I basically just turned off all his race updates and everything like that.
Focus on the exits, we can go faster here. You're a few tenths off the pace in Sector 1. Sector 3 is a second off the pace.
You can just hear him conferring my poor Sector 3 pace at the moment, but yeah, basically just turned everything off apart from the spotter functionality for the start of the race, so I can basically just focus on the actual driving and not having to worry about him. But I've turned the race and race delta feature, I believe, back on, so you should give me updates as to what the guys are doing in and around me, and actually taking a look at what the guys are doing in and around me. We're up at 9 seconds now to Fizzy Fan behind me, who's in 10th position, and Tipple, who's in 8th, is about 2.5 seconds in front, and you can see he is catching up to a train of 3 other cars in front of him, so he'll be a 4th car in that, and obviously the guys are battling for position a little bit, which will be slowing them.
The leader has just done a 1:25.6
and allowing Tipple to catch up, and hopefully I should be able to start catching up fairly soon as well, as we come towards the end of lap 9 now, as we come into the final corner. Getting on the power nice and early, running out a little bit wide. The outside wheels would have dipped onto the grass, which would have cost me traction. And then we're now starting lap 10.
Was a 1:27.7.
And that wasn't a great lap. As you can see, 6 tenths down on the fastest at the moment, which is pretty much a 1:27 flat. Only 8 hundredths off from being at 27.00. Running out very, very wide there through turn 4, which would have cost me a lot of time. Actually just pushing it a little bit too hard, as I can see the delta to Tipple is increasing. I can also see that he's closing right up onto the back of a BMW M3 up there, so I know that now is a good time to start pushing and see if we can work this gap down and basically try and capitalise on any mistakes, any battling that the guys in front of us are doing. As we come now into the chicane, attacking those curbs on the inside. You really have to watch the grass verge on the inside of the right hand of the second part of the chicane.
25.8.
If you clip that too hard, it is very, very easy to unsettle the car and send you off spin into the right hand side of the track, which obviously will cost you an awful lot of time. We seem to be taking a little bit more of a tighter line through that final hairpin at the moment than we had previously. Usually like to try and hook up a late apex.
7.7. You're 2 tenths off the pace in Sector 1. You're a second off the pace in Sector 2. P9.
So the crew chief there just giving us a little bit more of an update. Surprisingly, I was a second down in Sector 2 on that previous lap, which kind of surprised me a little bit, considering that's probably my strongest sector. So going to push hard. We're going to see if we can decrease this gap to Tipple, as he's now right behind the guys in front. Coming into this corner, the gap was about 3.6 seconds. It's kind of hovering a couple of tenths below that at the moment. You can see it's almost dropped down to 3.2. It's hanging around at 3.3, and he'll pull away a little bit coming down this reasonably shortish back straight here at Donington Park, coming into the chicane now. It looks like one of the guys has spun off to the right hand side of the track, as well as Tipple, and Alex has gone and reset there right in front of me. I was very much a brown trouser moment. I absolutely cracked myself when I saw his BMW teleport back onto the middle of the track. Obviously I was pushing it through that chicane there. I was already on the throttle and with a decent amount of steering lock. Fortunately, when the guys reset to the track, you are ghosted to start off with for a couple of seconds, and I believe I passed through him just before he would have become unghosted. But that was very, very dangerous, and that could have been very, very costly. That could have cost me my right front tyre effectively. I was full throttle coming out of that corner already, and it would have been my front left that would have hit his rear right, so that could have taken my tyre off. If not, it would have got a lot of suspension damage to the car, a lot of aero damage as well. It would have also done some damage to Alex's car and would have punted him off to the left hand side of the circuit again. But fortunately, because he was ghosted when he reset, passed straight through him and avoided that. But yeah, my god, was that scary. And it looks like Tipple has rejoined in behind me. He's about 1.2 seconds at the moment. He's got his headlights lighting up the cockpit of my car, and it looks like there's another car just behind him. It's probably Alex after he reset. So Tipple had a bit of a half spin there, probably got caught out by Alex spinning in front of him, and Alex pretty much spun all the way off the circuit in towards the wall before his reset. And there you can see just how much time I'm losing in the last two hairpins. Tipple's now pretty much right behind me on my rear bumper. He's now half a second, so going to come under pressure from him a little bit. I've got Brownski in front, about 5.5 seconds up the road. Just chasing him down at the end of the Nürburgring race that we did previously in round 1. So see if we can potentially close the gap to him, and also try and fight and keep Tipple behind me as I'm now up in P7. So things are going fairly good so far. Braking tyre temperatures are also looking pretty good. Lap times aren't too bad. They've dropped off to just over half a second, probably about 6 to 8 tenths. You can see there up in the top right. Slower than my fastest lap that I've done in the race so far. But hopefully with Tipple now behind me, it's going to help encourage me to push and try and build a bit of a gap to him. You can see I've extended it out to roughly a second in the first two sectors. He's gone and gained a little bit there through the chicane, and I'm also closing the gap to Brownski up in front, as well as Tipple comes right up onto my rear bumper in the hairpin and then stays at a fairly similar distance, accelerating out and coming down that short straight there as we now come on to the start-finish straight to start lap 14. You can see him there in my rear view mirror. Just taking a look up at him as we come in towards turn 1. Increase the pace a little bit again to try and keep Tipple behind us. We've gone very, very wide there on the exit of turn 1, kicking up a load of dust on the outside of the track. Tipple's still 3 tenths behind me at the moment. He'll lose a little bit of downforce through this corner with me right in front of him.
Hold your nerve, just
so I want to make sure that I get a good run through there, which I did. That's pretty tidy, and now I can really push and try and extend the gap a little bit, getting an absolutely beautiful line through that right-hander, nailing the apex perfectly and getting a really good smooth run coming out the exit. Didn't have to fight the car at all there. Likewise through this corner, you can see that he's dropped back a little bit in the rear view mirror there, and the gap has gone up to about 8 tenths. You can see it hovering around the 8 tenths mark in the delta down in the bottom left. It looks like we're catching up to Brownski in front. Again, Tipple's closed the gap a little bit, coming through the chicane. Rear end of the car stepping out, losing traction coming into that right-handed hairpin there. However, didn't really have to fight the wheel too much, just very, very small minor corrections as I can feel the tyres kind of half starting to grip up a little bit, and basically just use the extra rotation to tuck me into the corner a little bit more and a little bit tighter.
Sectors 1 and 2 are a few tenths off the pace. You're a second off the pace in sector 3. Your lap times are improving.
So the crew chief there letting me know how I'm doing around the lap. Sector 2 seems pretty good so far. However, it's always sector 3. I'm always a second down or off the pace through that sector, and I missed the apex there in turn 4, which has allowed Tipple to get fairly close up onto the back of my car. You can see he's there 3 tenths behind me. Hopefully we'll get another good smooth run coming through this right-hander, which it looks like we do, and hopefully again through this right-hander, and see if we can build a little bit more of a gap and make sure that we got ourselves a little bit of a buffer coming into the braking zone of the chicane and prevent Tipple from mounting any sort of attack. You can see that gap is 6 tenths and he's nowhere near close enough in the rear view mirror to try and send the move up my inside.
Has just done a 1:25.9.
So you can see there the difference of pace that I have over Tipple in Sector 2. Just pull away so easily, and it looks like Brownski's managed to get past Tony R somewhere along the line. That's Tony R, and his Aston Martin is now in 6th place, 2.5 seconds in front. You can see him there going through the final corner onto the start-finish straight now. So he's going to be my next target, and he may be struggling with tyres.
Sectors 1 and 2
a little
a few
bit.
tenths off the pace. You're a second down in Sector 3, 7th position.
One of the tyres there, I believe, was the front left, was locking a little bit. Let's get a load of oversteer as I apply the throttle on the exit of turn 1 there, with the rear wheels out on the grass. But managed to keep hold of that again, getting a nice smooth run through turn 4. Tipple was again getting pretty close. He got down to about 2 tenths now. It's 3 tenths behind me, so he's keeping pace with me quite nicely at the moment. I believe he is faster than myself. However, he just can't quite keep close enough through Sector 2 to try and make an attack into the chicane. As you can see, just pulling away. The gap's up to 5-6 tenths there, coming out of that long right-hander, which just negates any chance for him to make an attack into that chicane there that we've just been through. So if I can keep that up for a while, hopefully I should be able to continue to close the gap down to Tony R in front of us, as we've got a car there on the right hand side of the circuit on the inside of the hairpin, but I believe that was a back marker. There you can see Tipple got very, very close in that penultimate corner there, and it's popped up in my rear view mirror. You can see him there in the side mirror as he come through the final corner now onto the start finish straight to start. Lap 17 now, almost halfway into this race.
You've just done
and he's about 4 tenths behind, so
down in Sector 2. You're a
just
second
got to
down
manage
in
this
Sector 3.
pressure. Got a very, very nice run there through turn 1, a lot better than the last couple of laps, that's for sure. You can see the gap's now up to 5 tenths because of that. Just absolutely nailed turn 1. Hopefully we can nail this turn 4 as well, taking a little bit there off on the inside, which meant that we didn't run quite so far out wide. We probably could have run a little bit wider, not quite using the full width of the track.
All clear on engine temperatures.
Getting a nice smooth run through here. We should be able to eke out the gap a little bit more to Tipple, and again prevent him from trying to make a move down the inside into the chicane. So you can see there the gap's now up to 7 tenths. The gap is now down to under 2 seconds to Tony R in front. So
the leader's just done a 1.
eyes are both kind of forwards and backwards at the moment, trying to manage the pressure from behind and just trying to obviously focus on driving a nice smooth line and trying to be consistent and trying to close the gap to Tony R in front, which is what we're doing quite nicely. A little bit too far out wide there on the exit of that right-hander and kicking up a load of dirt and dust, which would have affected traction. However, getting a nice smooth run through the final corner. So coming into lap 18, we come into around the pit stop window now.
That's good.
A lot of the guys will be running a one-stop,
creeping up.
obviously running on the soft tyres and then making a single stop to change onto the soft tyres. Again, you can see that down in the bottom right just how much tyre life I have left on these tyres, which is okay but not brilliant. You can see that the car understeering as we went through turn 4, running out very, very wide, which is going to cost me quite a fair amount of time. You can see it was 3 tenths down on my fastest lap, and now Tipple's getting very, very close into this right-hander. However, I just held my line and prevented him from making a move up the inside, as it looks like Tony's going to run out wide there in this right-hander. This should give me a good run coming out the exit of here to try and get alongside him, try and mount a challenge coming down in towards the chicane. You can see there I'm on his left-hand side. I've got the inside for the first part of the chicane, but obviously he'll have it for the second. So nailing the braking point, making sure I'm trying to get the car slowed down, taking out the first part, giving a little bit of squeeze through the right-hander part there. He's still there on the right-hand side, taking a quick glance over to see where he is now. He's got the inside here for this hairpin, going to try and hang it around the outside of him. Doing so still side by side to get a little bit of contact there as I come out through the exit. It's going to push me out onto the grass. It's going to maintain the position somewhat. I've now got Tipple on my outside. However, Tony's taking a very wide line into this final hairpin now. Gonna snuck up the inside of him and taken that position. I still got Tipple behind, and it looked like Tony had to slam on the brakes as I'm now coming under pressure from Tipple, going defensive into turn 1. He's going to be there on my outside, so I've got to give him plenty of room on the exit, giving a little bit of a squeeze. There he is, just taking a quick glance over to where he is on my left hand side. I've got a Kuchi telling me he's still there. We're going to go side by side coming down into turn 3. It sounds like Tipple may have backed out of it there. You can see he's just popped up in the rear view mirror there, and I've gone and managed to maintain my position somewhat and slip myself up into 5th place, as it looks like Tipple has actually gone and made a mistake coming through turn 4 and has gone and dropped off behind. Papan's now actually slipped past him, and that's going to give me 2 seconds worth of breathing room, as Brownski is now my next target up in 4th position. He's now 9 seconds up the road, so I think Tony was probably struggling with the tyres, which allowed us to close up onto him, and then he obviously made the mistake. Managed to get up to alongside him, as you saw there, with some fantastic wheel-to-wheel battling. That was a hell of a lot of fun. Very nice, respectable stuff between the both of us. And I believe when he came around the outside, having actually spoken to him after the race, he said that when he came through the hairpin, he saw a pair of headlights pop up in his rear view mirror as we're coming through that hairpin there that we've just been through, and he thought that was me. It was actually Tipple, so he thought I'd slopped in behind him, and he therefore took his usual line through the hairpin, which obviously squeezed me out off onto the grass on the exit there, but no real harm done. I didn't lose out too much on that. I was only a car length or 2 that it cost me, and obviously, as you saw, I managed to get up the inside of him into the final corner. However, Tony actually wanted to dive into the pits on that lap, so he basically had to slam on the brakes, let both myself and Tipple through so he can make the pit entry, and I believe he's managed to do that. So obviously the guys are all starting to make their pit stops now, which is kind of why I'm up into 5th position. I believe one of the guys has stopped, and I've gained another place somewhere, so I'm planning on pitting fairly soon. We've got Papan behind who's managed to, like I said, slip himself past Tipple, and Papan's actually closed the gap over the last lap or 2. It was 2 seconds, it's now 1 second, so Papan's pushing fairly hard as I get a fairly significant oversteer moment there going through the chicane, having to put a load of opposite lock in to catch the rear end. And you can see by struggling through the hairpins, it's going to cost me a good 4 tenths or so to Papan. He's managed to close the gap up a little bit more, and he will do coming through this hairpin here as well. Just got to try and get myself a good exit and a good run coming down this start-finish straight. You can see there he's 4 tenths, and he's quite easily visible in the rearview mirror. I'm now almost a second down off my fastest lap. So the tyre wears are starting to take a little bit more of an effect on the car, losing some time, but hopefully we can manage that a little bit. Obviously all the other guys will be having similar tyre wear as well, and it seems to be, as you go through various different stages of the tyre's life, they tend to drop a little bit in terms of grip, and then it drops a little bit more and it gets to a certain point and it drops off a massive cliff, but you still have a little bit of grip, and then they, after that it gets to a certain point and they just completely go.
The lead car's pitting.
So it's just a case of preparing yourself for that, and as you can see, obviously I want to make a pit stop on this lap. I have called my pit crew to be ready, as I plan to make the stop and give myself about 18 laps of running on the new set of soft tyres. I don't really need to change the pressures. I won't need to take on fuel. I've got plenty of fuel to last me the rest of the race. You can see at the moment in 4th position, as someone did pit on the previous lap. So we're now going to come into the pits and make our stop. Hopefully it'll be nice and smooth. There you can see all my possible pit stops and pit strategies lined up, and all I wanted to do was just make sure that the one that I had selected and ready to go is the one that was highlighted, and the pit crew will do exactly the instructions that I had in that pit strategy. So 6th position at the moment. There goes my teammate Andrax, and he made his stop on lap 18, just as we were passing Tony and also Tipple. And we're now coming out of the pits, just making sure I've got the right tyre pressures and also the right tyres, as it looks like Tony's actually going to manage to jump me in the pits there. He obviously taking full advantage of the new tyre grip on a new set of tyres, has gone and jumped me in the pits and has got himself 7th position. I've rejoined the track in P8, and I know I did take the in-lap a little bit cautious because obviously didn't want to lose any time making a mistake, but I didn't realise it was that cautious. And Tony, obviously, yeah, he's going to make the jump, so got a little bit of work now to do, try and close on back up onto the back of him, try and take advantage of the tyres that I now have, obviously with the fresh rubber.
You've got half your fuel left.
They'll provide plenty of grip. We've got Tipple behind me, who's 2 seconds. I believe that he also made a pit stop as well, roughly the same time that I did. I didn't actually see whether he made the stop on the same lap that I did or the lap before. Obviously Papan was between myself and him. Papan has currently gone and carried on round, so he will probably be making his pit stop on this lap, so it'll be interesting to see where he actually comes out. He was pretty much right behind me when I came into my stop, so hopefully he'll be able to stay in front of him as we come now onto the start finish straight to start lap 23, and there is Papan actually coming out of the pits now. It looks like he's going to be able to slip out just in front of me. He's going to leave some room on the inside just in case I was going to take that. However, I wasn't really quite close enough to take advantage, so I've gone and lost the position to Papan. Papan's managed to jump me in the whole pit stop phase, and he's got himself up into 7th position after his spin on the first lap there. So yeah, not a good pit stop window for myself. I think my in-lap was a little bit too cautious. Same with my out-lap. And obviously the guys around me were just able to push that a little bit harder than I was. And yeah, they jumped me in the pits. Both Tony R and Papan. So lost out effectively 2 positions there. I've managed to maintain the position to Tipple, who's behind and is catching me slowly. Hopefully we should be able to hang on to the back of Papan. It looks like we've got a white McLaren here up in front, just behind Tony. I believe that he is a back marker, so he should get out of the way fairly soon at the best opportunity. It's quite difficult to do in sector 1, as all the corners tend to flow into each other. You can see there just how much time I lose compared to Papan coming out of those 2 hairpins, especially that final one. He's gone and got the gap up to about 1.5 seconds. Obviously he's pushing quite hard on these new set of tyres. I'm still kind of waiting for my pressures to come up a little bit. It does take a couple of laps for them to stabilise in the optimal window, but yeah, just really struggling through sector 3. The other guys are taking full advantage of that as we get fairly close to the back of this McLaren. Coming through sector 2, he stays to the right hand side of the track and lets me through. I'm sure he'll let Tipple through as well, kind of just about. He kind of stayed there on the inside, and Tipple had to run a little bit wider than he would have usually. He wasn't able to take the apex, which is going to give me a little bit more breathing room. So come and attack the curves through the chicane. Gap to Papan is still 1.5 seconds, and it looks like that Tipple's actually going to have made a mistake somewhere along the line. He's going to drop back down to 3-4 seconds, so I think he may have had a moment through the chicane itself on the exit. Probably had a little bit of a half spin, and that's going to cost him some time. So some breathing room behind me, and annoyingly some breathing room for Papan in front of me. The gap is 2.5 seconds. It's going to take another second in sector 3.
2.5 seconds.
Crew chief giving me some more race updates there, and he is actually really quite useful to have. A lot of the things that he does say is kind of information that is available to me anyway, like the deltas and things like that. I can see those for myself down in the bottom left. but I don't always want to be, you know, constantly monitoring my deltas. It's quite nice to have.
The leader has just done a 1:25.5.
It's quite nice to have him tell you the information, so you can just focus on the road ahead. And also, like that little bit of information you just said there, that kind of stuff you can't pick up anywhere. As far as I know, from any sort of telemetry apps, or not ones where it require a fair amount of attention to look at, and obviously take my eyes off the road. So that kind of thing's really, really useful. Obviously the spotter there is absolutely fantastic as well. Very, very useful to have that, although he did kind of fail me a little bit in Nürburgring. He didn't call out when Andrex was making a move on my inside, and I didn't see that he was there. So we both ended up making contact.
You've just done a 1:26.9. That's your quickest lap.
So yeah, new personal best for this lap as I go very, very wide there on the exit of turn 1. Now dip down into the 126s. Before it was a 127.08, I believe, and as you can see, with the tail lights up in front of me, it looks like Papan has managed to close right up onto the back of Tony R. Both of them have increased the gap to myself at the moment. I've now got it up to just under 3.5 seconds.
Just done a 1:25.7.
And Tipple was 6.7 seconds behind, so I think he may have had another half spin somewhere along the line. Obviously, he had one in the chicane not long after the pit stops, which dropped him down to about 4 seconds, but I think he may have had another one somewhere along the line, probably trying to push and close the gap back up to myself. And he's going to have made another mistake somewhere along the line.
The gap in front is now 2.8 seconds.
And the gap is coming down in those first 2 sectors, but it will increase again coming through these 2 hairpins. So at the moment it's 2.8, so I haven't really lost too much time coming through that first hairpin. It's going to be this one though that you can see already the gap has gone up to 3.1, 3.2 now. So that's 4 tenths in one corner.
You're a second
quite
down
significant.
in sectors 1 and 3. You're a few tenths off the pace in sector 2, P8.
So I was obviously a second down in the first sector. Now that was mainly due to me running wide on the exit of turn 1, which cost me 4 tenths, I believe, as this corner was rather tidy last time through. And again there you can see 400ths of a second up on my fastest lap from 2 laps ago.
The leader's just done a 1:26.4.
And the gap is coming down again to Papan. We're closing up on him visibly through sectors 1 and 2, and also you can see there in the deltas is now down to 2.5 seconds. So hopefully these 2 guys will continue on battling and help me to close up onto the back of them, as it looks like Papan's had a pretty poor run through the chicane as I go a tenth quicker than my fastest lap, and he's gone and lost even more time. The gap is now down under 2 seconds, although it's gone up to 2 seconds again through that hairpin. There you can see in the delta down in the bottom left. Tyre temperatures are looking pretty good, as it looks like Alex has gone and left the session there, probably disconnect from the lobby. He was behind me, so I'm not going to gain a position from that. You can see that.
A few tenths off the pace. You're a tenth off the pace in sector 2.
Kind of lost a little bit of time through the final sector, and I've gone very, very wide there through turn 1. Completely missed the apex on the inside, but still managed to keep it within the confines of the track. It's going to cost me a little bit of time, as it looks like Papan's right on the rear of Tony up in front of us, possibly having a little bit of a look.
The gap ahead is
come
now
through
2.6
turn 5.
seconds.
There you can see just how much time you lose through turn 1 alone
The leader's just
if you
done
get
a
it wrong. It's
25.1.
a key corner on this circuit. If you get that right, you can really improve your lap times. You can find an awful lot of time just through that one corner alone, and then obviously all the other corners as well. It was an okay run through the chicane there. Had a little bit of oversteer coming out through the exit, and had to turned the wheel to the left when I was going right to counter the rear end. You can still see that Papan is still right behind Tony, Tipper behind. He's got the gap down to just over 6 seconds. So he's starting to push and close the gap back to me now as well, especially in this last sector. You can see that first corner last time round cost me quite a significant amount, and the rest of the lap was fairly consistent compared to all the other previous laps that I've been doing. And again, a very good run through turn 4 there, only 300ths off the previous lap, so consistency is very, very good so far this season, as it looks like Papan was having a little bit of a look there up the inside of Tony. Thought better of it. That obviously would have cost them both a little bit of time, so I tried to really push through that long right-hander there, and I've got the gap down to under 2 seconds. Will increase again through this final sector, so good run there through the chicane, really attacking the curbs.
The gap's now
still only 300ths off my fastest lap. The gap is 1.6, so we're closing on them still, and we've got 10 full laps of racing left as we come out the final corner to finish lap 29 and start lap 30.
That lap was a 1:26.8.
Absolutely beautiful lap. 10th quicker than my previous fastest lap. Very happy with that. If we can keep this kind of consistency and those sort of lap times coming, we should be able to close the gap to the guys in front, and hopefully get ourselves up onto the rear of their cars fairly soon. Especially when these two are battling, and hopefully we'll be able to gain ourselves a couple of positions. At the moment I'm still 5 places up from where I started, as it looks like Papan is having a little bit of a look down the inside there of Tony into this chicane. He's going to slot it in behind him now. Going to cost them a little bit more time, and the gap is now down to 1.4 seconds, as you can see in the delta in the bottom left. Gap is still 6.5 seconds to Tipple behind, so that gap's not really changing too much. As he going tightening up the chicane for myself quite significantly there. Turned in a little bit too early for the left part, the very first part of that chicane. That made the line a little bit more awkward, a little bit more tight, but even still the gap is now only a second to Papan in front of us, and we are really starting to capitalise on their battling. I imagine Papan is very, very eager to try and get past Tony R as soon as possible, especially as he is the one who will be able to see that the
P8
delta between myself and him is decreasing on a lap by lap basis as we go a little bit deep there and out wide on the exit of turn 1. You can see that Papan's having a little bit of a look there at Tony R, coming through turn 3 into turn 4. Really trying to push now and trying to maximise my chances of trying to get up onto the back of the roof in front of me. So it looks like Papan's gone out very, very wide there through that right-hander, which has allowed me to get within a second quite easily. Although I've gone a little bit deep on the exit there and out wide. Just going to move the gap from about 0.7 seconds up to 0.9. You see that it's just hanging just under a second now. It's probably about 6 car lengths between myself and the rear of Papan's roof, as the rear wanted to step out a little bit there upon initial turning as Papan goes out wide there on the exit of the chicane, which is going to allow me to close right up onto the back of his car into this hairpin. The gap is now under half a second, there or thereabouts, as Brownski goes and disconnects. Brownski was actually up in front of us as well, so that's actually gone and gifted me P7, which means that P6 is Papan and P5 is Tony R. So it looks like at the moment we're in for a pretty good chance here of some decent points, especially considering where I started. And if I can just keep this pace up, and also the consistency, not making any mistakes,
Seventh position.
I'll be very, very pleased with the end result. at the moment on par with my previous race finish in Nürburgring. I started in 7th and finished in 7th. And a pretty poor start in that race, and dropped down a couple of positions on the first lap. However, I was able to capitalise on a number of mistakes that people were making. I managed to get myself back up into 7th position, almost got myself 5th. May even potentially have had the chance of 4th position, as it looks like Papin's trying to slip himself into the slipstream of Tony R and see if he can make a challenge into the chicane, but for the moment he's slotting in behind him as he again goes and dips his left wheels onto the grass on the outside of the chicane, kicking up some dirt into my face as Tony dips his wheels onto the inside of that hairpin just there. Gap 1.2 seconds, and the gap from Tipple has actually gone down to 5 seconds now, so Tipple's now making a little bit of a charge to try and close the gap up onto me. You may actually be able to see that we're battling, as it looks like Papin's going to try and make a move down the inside of Tony R. Coming into this first turn, they're going side by side. Tony R's going to have to give up the apex there, which is going to slow them both. Obviously, Papin won't be able to get on the power as early as he would have liked to. It looks like they're still going side by side, however. And it now looks like Papin has gone and slipped in to 6th position. He hasn't been able to make the move just yet,
The leader has just
and that's going to allow me to close a little bit of the gap to Papin through sector 1, where I'm reasonably good. This is where I'm very, very good, is through this sector, so we should be able to close the gap up a little bit more as well. Hopefully we can close right up onto the back of his car. Coming into the chicane, you can see the gap is under half a second, 3/10 at the moment as we come out onto this back straight. It will allow me to pick up a little bit of a slipstream, which will help me come down this back straight as we come into the braking zone now. Really attacking the curbs there through the chicane. You can see Papin is really trying to push, took a fair bit off on the inside and ran out very, very wide there. All 4 wheels off the track on the exit of the chicane. I just got to try and hang with them through the hairpin, but you can see the gap visually opening up to the 2 guys in front, as they're just able to put the power down so much better than I am. They've got such much better acceleration. And again there, through that hairpin, the gap is now up to a second, even though it was only 3/10 like 2 corners ago. Just really struggling with the setup. However, these 2 sectors are so good for myself that I'm just able to close up the gap to them, and also increase the gap to Tipple behind. The gap's actually come down even more. It's now 4.7 seconds. It's going to take a fair bit there off on the inside. Also the outside there. I've got to be careful with the track limits. You are not allowed to dip all 4 wheels over the white lines. If you do, you're meant to lift off the accelerator and basically negate any advantage that you would have gained. However, obviously with myself running out wide, I would have lost a little bit of momentum and a little bit of traction running out on the grass. And we can see there, guys really pushing at the moment, myself as well. Trying to hold on to the positions. It looks like Papin is trying to have a little bit of a look there down the inside of Tony R, possibly trying to distract them. They've had a pretty good battle so far in the closing stages of this race, or shall I say the second half. We're not quite into the closing stages yet. We still got 5 full racing laps to go. You can see once again they're pulling away, coming down the start-finish straight. The gap is a second. So now I just got to try and make sure I get a good run coming through turn 1. Which should do a little bit of oversteer there on the exit as I was picking up the accelerator. You can hear the revs running up to the red line, which is where I don't want them to be going. I would have been losing out on some acceleration with that. It looked like Tony R was a little bit slow there through turn 4, which has allowed Papin to get very close once again. He doesn't look like he's going to quite be able to carry some momentum to have a look through, and I got a much better run through the braking zone then. It's closed right up onto the back of Papin through that right-hander. You can see 2 attempts are now pretty much right up on his rear bumper. They're giving us plenty of slipstream as we come down this back straight now, down towards the chicane. Papin holding a little bit more of a defensive line, staying out the slipstream of Tony R. basically just trying to present himself into the mirrors of Tony. Has got a very, very good run there at Papan through the chicane, having a little bit of a look now, able to come into this hairpin. Papan trying to make the corner as tight as possible for myself, and both of us braking at pretty much exactly the same braking point. I wasn't really able to make a move down the inside there, thought it would be a little bit too risky, so basically just tucked to the outside, took my normal line. But also in doing so, again, I've gone and lost some time to these guys through those last two corners.
E7.
Gap still 4 seconds to Tipple behind, so he is closing up on us slowly but surely. Again, getting a little bit of oversteer as I try and put the power down, coming through turn 1. Papan still hanging on to the back of Tony, who's quite possibly struggling with tyres at this point in the race. Just going to run a little bit wide there through turn 4. 3 temps down on our fastest lap at the moment. Tyre temperatures look good, braking temperatures a little bit hot, but looking good. Ideally, I'd like them to stay under the 600 degrees mark. At the moment, they are just under that, although getting very, very close in the number of the braking zones. Even more so when I'm following in the dirty air of the cars in front, as it looks like Papan's got a bit of a run here on Tony R. Is going to be having a look down the outside into the chicane, although Tony R has managed to stay in front of them there. It looked like they were going side by side, but look, in fact, Tony was actually just in front of us. He had a little bit of lag there from one of the back markers in front in the Z4. He's just going to take away the accelerating line from Tony. He's hanging to the left hand side of the track now and is now on the brakes, getting well out of the way of all 3 of us, and has let us through quite nicely there. So that wouldn't have played into Tony's hands too much, would have played into Papan's and also my own hands here. So it looks like that Papan is having another slight look at the inside of Tony R there. He's taking a wider line on the entry than Tony. Tony tends to take it a little bit tighter there, you can see. And we can see a couple of tail lights up in front of us as well. I wonder if these guys, or those tail lights, are of 4th position. And also that podium of 3rd place, or whether it's actually a back marker. Obviously we can't really tell until we get closer. We've only got 3 laps to go as we get a massive oversteer moment there through that right hander. Somehow managed to catch that and turn into a rather nice drift. And actually it looks like that Tony R is going to run off wide there on the exit of that right hander. It's going to allow Papan to slip up into 5th position. Tony now in 6th. Obviously Tony must be struggling with his tyres at this later stage in the race. He did stop a lap or 2 before myself, and also a couple of laps before Papan. It looks like Papan's had a little bit of a poor run through the chicane. They're going to go side by side now as Tony tries to go around the outside into this second to last corner, the hairpin, and doesn't quite able to get the move to work for him. My cockpit's now actually being lit up by a set of headlights. That'll be Tipples behind, who's now got the gap down to just under 2 seconds as we come to start the last couple of laps of this race. So things are getting very, very close and heated in the dying stages once again, like they did in Nürburgring on the previous round. Almost losing the rear of the car there, under braking into turn 1, but we managed to keep hold of that and navigate our way through the corner quite nicely.
The leader has just done a
so,
1:25.9.
knowing that Tony is struggling with tyres a little bit, I'm going to try and push and see if I can get myself up into 6th position. The gap is starting to increase between Tony and Papan in front of him. So it looks like that Papan has got plenty of pace still in his car. He did pit a few laps after Tony and a lap after myself, so we will have slightly fresher tyres, as you can see, getting a much nicer, smoother run there through that right-hander than Tony, and again through this right-hander as well, which is allowing me to close up onto the back. I'll have the slipstream as we come down this back straight down towards the chicane, but you can see the acceleration that his car has. He's going to need out a couple of car lengths to myself. Now both push through the chicane, both of us a little bit rough around the edges as one of the back markers there gets well out of the way. Unfortunately it was out onto the grass and he wasn't able to rejoin the track as it sounded like I locked up a wheel there. Also looks like Tony's gone a little bit deep there, very, very close to making contact on the exit of that hairpin, but both of us managing to avoid doing so almost got pinched on the exit, and I just about managed to spot that as we come through the final corner now. It looks like Tony's gone and lost the rear end of the car, trying to put the power down on the exit there, and has spun over to the left-hand side of the circuit into the wall, which has gone and gifted me P6.
2 to go.
So now up another position. As you can see, the Delta, the new Delta to Paphand, who is in 5th, is 2 seconds up the road. And I've got Tipple to under a second as Tony R goes and disconnects there. That's very, very unfortunate for him, and it actually turned out that he had a power cut, and that will obviously be the cause of his disconnect, which is a shame. That was some good battling that I had in this race with Tony. I thoroughly enjoyed that, and he did as well. It's very, very unfortunate. We've got a back marker here in front of us. He goes very, very wide out onto the gravel. He left him some room on the outside of that corner there to allow him to come back on track, but he stayed off the track to let Tipple, who is behind me as well, to slide through. And actually looks like Tipple's gone and made a mistake somewhere along the lines through those sequence of corners, and has gone and dropped well off to 5 seconds behind. So now I've got plenty of breathing room behind me.
In front is now 2 seconds.
2 second gap to Paphand in front. So now we've got 2 corners to go on this lap. Make that 1 corner to go, and then we're on the final lap. So probably the best idea is to be settling down now for 6th position. I don't think I have it in me. I don't think I have the pace to close a 2.5 second gap to Paphand in a single lap, and also try and make a move that it's just too risky.
We can go faster,
considering I started in 13th.
The leader has just
very, very good result.
5.
And the leader's actually got on finished the race, so he wasn't actually too far off lapping me and a number of other drivers. So yeah, just about managing to stay on the lead lap. You can see the amount of pace that obviously they would have had, but very, very pleased with this 6th place at the moment, albeit gifted in a number of ways. And actually ignore the 9th place down in the bottom left there that it currently displays. It's just the weird system that Project Cars has in the way that it records people going over the start finish line. It momentarily places those who are a lap down in front of yourself, as it does it by the cars going the cars in order going over the start finish line rather than the actual positions at the time. But when it actually comes to the results screen, it will sort itself out. Again, I've actually got a lap car here just in front of me. However, I'm not too worried about overtaking him. However, he does go and give me the apex. Coming through the final corner now, and across the start finish line to take 6th position. So very, very happy with that.
P16. There's the checkered flag.
Gave myself a number of positions and given myself a good amount of points. And there is the final results, as you can see. So myself in 6th, Andrex, my teammate, in 4th position. So Eurex Racing bagging ourselves a very good haul of points there from this race. Should do us very, very nicely for the team championship. You can see there the guys down in the second half of the results screen as well. So yes, thoroughly enjoyed that race. Very, very happy with that. And there you can see the Constructors Championship at the moment. And you can see that we are joint 3rd with 5 Aces Esport, who is formed by Kaki and Alex. Alex disconnected in this race, so he wouldn't have picked up any points from that. However, Kaki got himself a pretty good result with 2nd position in that race. And you can see the calendar for the next round, which is going to be Zolder. And they're starting in a fairly late afternoon at 4 o'clock in game time. So we'll probably go through sunset and into the night in that race as well. And that should be a fairly good track for the Z4. This is pretty good through the chicanes. And hopefully we'll be able to get ourselves another decent result for that race as well. But yes, I'm going to wrap it up there for this video. Round 2 of the Elite League for Apex Online Racing. It was GT3 Season 3 at Donington Park. I thoroughly enjoyed that one. Hopefully you guys did as well, so please give the video a rating. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave those in the comment section below, and I shall try and get back to you as soon as possible. And if you're really enjoying these AOR League races, then please subscribe to the channel, and that way you definitely won't be missing out on any future races. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys. Hopefully I shall see you soon. In the meantime, take care.